can heal this home.
Hi, and welcome to our third session in the Love Is series, based on chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians. We're still filming here in Caloocan in the Philippines, and it's been really long. Like, our doctors and our dentists, everyone in the team has been getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning for the bus to leave at 6:30 and working through in 35, 36 degree heat and just pushing through. And we're starting to actually see some of our team get a little bit irritated with each other, and I think the tiredness is really beginning to show. And so today I think it's kind of quite timely that we're discussing that love does not insist on its own way and is not irritable or resentful. I think the first thing that you need to understand about love does not insist on its own way is that, I think one theologian put it, that the God of this age, the primary thing that sits opposed to Jesus and God himself, is our own way. We like to serve ourselves. We like to have it our own way. And so when Paul says love does not insist on its own way, I think he's tackling one of the big strongholds in our lives that prevents us from really loving well. But before I go into what that is, I just want to make a bit of a clarification. Love does not insist on its own way. That doesn't mean that love never gets its way. That doesn't mean that you just go around and you're a doormat and you never express what goes on inside of you. It's talking about love not insisting, not saying my way is the only way. There was a study done a while ago. I was reading a book called Give and Take, and there was a study done of doctors and architects, sociologists, teachers, I think, as well, and it looked at how they progressed in their careers over the years, and they categorized everybody between givers, takers, and matchers. And matchers are people who, I'll give you one, but then I'll take one. If I take one, I'll give you one. And they looked at the bottom segment of people who are just not doing very well. And givers were at the bottom of the list. That if you were a person who gave a lot, that you said, oh, don't worry, I don't need that promotion, the guy next to me can have the promotion. If you constantly were the one sort of looking out for others and being really self-sacrificial, you actually ended up not getting promotions and not doing well. The bottom of that list were givers. And takers actually performed better than givers. People who went up to their boss and said, you need to give me that promotion. I've been working here really hard. And so it kind of confirms what is our common everyday knowledge, that if you are to grab for stuff, you actually do better than somebody who just gives out everything. But what was really interesting from that study, from that series of studies, was when they looked at the top performers on the top end of the whole scale, it was dominated by givers. So at the top end were givers, and at the bottom end were givers, and in the middle were the takers and the matchers. Why is that? It turned out that people on the top end of the scale who were givers suddenly were being known for their generosity. Their favors were creating for them a name, and their network was kind of kicking in. And so the whole book actually explored the difference between the givers at the top and the givers at the bottom. And what was different about the givers at the top and the bottom was the givers at the bottom were just giving. They were never even saying their own way. They were a little bit dysfunctional in that it was a compulsive giving. Whereas those that were givers at the top, they were not giving all the time. They would still say their own way. They just would not insist on their own way. And I think that's what's in view in today's verse. Love does not insist on its own way. Then linked to that is being irritable. I think we get irritated, to be honest, when people don't do things our way. If we are a person who is always on time, we get irritated with the person who comes 5-10 minutes late. If we are always used to coming 5-10 minutes late, we get irritated at the person who 5 minutes before the time is already bugging you. Hey, don't be late, don't be late, we better be on time. And it just irritates you. I had a friend at university. He'd bicycle to uni sometimes, and he would drive other days. And on the days that he was bicycling, he would be irritated with car drivers. And on the days he would drive, he'd be irritated with the motorcyclists and the bicyclists. Let's look at today's passage in Mark 6.
The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." For there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a desolate place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. And then when it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Send them away to go into the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But Jesus answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat?"
But in that situation, it's the end of a long mission trip for the disciples. They've seen a lot of people, much like us over here. And the people are just asking for very normal things. They want some food and they are hungry. But I think you'll see in that passage, the disciples get irritated. That passage shows us who can get irritated. I think everyone can get irritated. It's the disciples of Jesus Christ. Some of them planted and led church. The first pope, the planter of the whole church, Peter, was in that list. So every one of us can get irritated. When are we likely to get irritated? Well, we're likely to get irritated when we're physically weak, when we're tired or we're hungry. We're likely to get irritated when we're emotionally weak, emotionally drained from a whole day of ministry, or maybe you've been giving and giving and giving. But what I want to talk to you about is when you're spiritually weak, when maybe you haven't had enough time with God, time for God to convict you or speak to you about your attitude. One of the great things about the spiritual discipline of quiet time is that you can wake up in the morning or before you sleep at night, reflect and allow the Holy Spirit to speak into your life. It is those times, for me anyway, that God's been able to say, maybe you need to apologize. Maybe you need to think twice about what you just did or said. I would encourage you to check whether you are spiritually weak, whether you're spiritually weak or emotionally weak. That's on the prevention side of being irritated. Then, look, if you, as with all of us, do get irritated, I think the next big tip that I've got for you is to practice a buffer. The Greek word for irritable actually can be translated as easily provoked, easily angered, quick-tempered. It's got that fast element to it. And can I encourage you as a home group to go back to that first description of love. Love is patient. I think one way to conquer irritability is to build in a buffer that before you react, before you swear or lose your temper at a car that cuts you off, just build in some time to be patient and stop. And so it's not so fast, so it's not so quick. Build in that buffer. Jesus certainly did that, and he said, hold on, Let's see what we can do. Please have a good discussion as a home group and explore this thoroughly. Love does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. God bless.